goodwill interests that are with us tonight. We have in our midst a brother who has devoted more than 21 years at the headquarters of the society, a member of the Bethel family. I personally have been with Brother Quackenbush many years and served with him. It is always a delight to have these brothers with us and the message that they bring to us. Tonight, the subject is one I'm thinking will be of great interest to all of us who are spiritual minded. Made in His image. Brother Quackenbush will talk to us on that subject.
I don't know whether Brother Tedesco knew it or not when he asked me to come here, but I'm unbalanced. But so are you. So is everyone I know. And everyone I don't know. Everyone on the earth is unbalanced. If they were going to put away everyone unbalanced into an institution, they'd have to turn the whole earth into one. The first man was not unbalanced in the beginning. And here's a record of God's creation of him that shows why. And God went on to say, "Let us make man in our image, according to our likeness, and let them have in subjection the fish of the sea, and the flying creatures of the heavens, and the domestic animals, and all the earth, and every creeping animal that is creeping upon the earth." And God proceeded to create the man in His image. In God's image He created him, male and female He created them. Further, God blessed them, and God said to them, "Be fruitful and become many, and fill the earth, and subdue it, and have in subjection the fish of the sea, and the flying creatures of the heavens, and every living creature that is creeping upon the earth." Made in God's image. What does it mean? Does it mean that we look like God in our physical body? In Deuteronomy, the 4th chapter, we read something that answers that. The 4th chapter, starting with the 12th verse, states, "And Jehovah began to speak to you out of the middle of the fire." This is at the time of the giving of the law at Mount Sinai. "The sound of words was what you were hearing, but no form were you seeing, nothing but a voice. And you must take good care of your souls, because you did not see any form on the day of Jehovah speaking to you in Horeb out of the middle of the fire, that you may not act ruinously, and do not make for yourselves a carved image, the form of any symbol, the representation of male or female, the representation of any beast that is in the earth, the representation of any winged bird that flies in the heavens, the representation of anything creeping on the ground, the representation of any fish that is in the waters under the earth. And that you may not raise your eyes to the heavens, and indeed see the sun and the moon and the stars, all the army of the heavens, and certainly get seduced and bow down to them and serve them, when Jehovah your God has apportioned to all the peoples under the whole heavens." What is He telling them here? He's telling them not to make the mistake of trying to make an image to represent Him. He says, "You don't know what I look like. You heard me speak at Mount Sinai, but you didn't see my form. If you tried to make an image of me, you wouldn't know how to make it. Don't make it of any animal, of any bird, of any human creature, of any of the heavenly hosts, because it wouldn't be right. You do not know what I look like, so don't try to make an image of me." Now, of course, if man were made in God's image in a physical sense, man would know what God looks like. And he could make an image similar to a human creature, and he would have a representation of God. But the very fact that Jehovah points out, you don't know what an image of me is like, and therefore don't try to make one, proves that being made in God's image does not mean in any physical appearance. In what sense, then, did Jehovah God create Adam and Eve in His image. It's with regard to the attributes or qualities of Jehovah God. And the Bible identifies these for us. It states in Deuteronomy, the 32nd chapter, and the 4th verse, "The rock, perfect is His activity, for all His ways are justice, a God of faithfulness, with whom there is no injustice. Righteous and upright is He." So justice is one of His attributes, and there is no injustice in Him. Justice is one of His qualities. Another one is love, because in 1 John 4:8 we read, "God is love." So that is one of His attributes. And then in Job, the 28th chapter, we read this concerning Jehovah. In the 12th, 20th, and 23rd verses, "But wisdom, where can it be found? And where now is the place of understanding?" And then it goes on a few verses to show places where it is not, where it cannot be found. And then in the 20th verse, "But wisdom itself, where does it come? And where now is the place of understanding?" And it states a few more places where it is not. And then in the 23rd verse, "God it is who has understood its way, and He Himself has known its place." That is the way of wisdom and the place of understanding. So wisdom is another one of the attributes of Jehovah God. And the final one is shown in Psalm 62, verse 11, where it states, "Power belongs to Jehovah." And that is the fourth attribute the Bible points out for Jehovah God, the attribute of power. So His attributes are justice, love, wisdom, and power. And that is the image of God in which man was made. Man being given not justice, love, wisdom, and power, but a capacity for it, an ability to develop it. He has this capacity of justice because after some instruction as to right and wrong, he appreciates justice. So much so that if he goes contrary to that sense of justice that he has developed through this capacity, his conscience hurts him. And if it hurts him enough, he gets guilt complexes, and it can even make him physically sick. Man wants justice. He burns for it. It becomes an appetite, just like the appetite for food or for drink. And man must have justice to be happy. Man has the attribute of love. He has this capacity. He can learn love and appreciate it and respond to it, and in turn give it himself to others. And he's not happy without it. His appetite, his hunger for love must be satisfied. He has the capacity for wisdom. Wisdom and knowledge were not stuffed into his head at the time of his creation, but he was given a brain with a capacity to absorb wisdom. And he also was given the quality of power, the ability to work, to do things, to exercise dominion. So in all of these respects, man was made in Jehovah's image, and his work should reflect these qualities, just as the works of Jehovah God reflect those qualities on his part. We can see Jehovah's works in his creation. It states in Psalm 19, verses 1 to 4, "The heavens are declaring the glory of God, And the work of his hands the expanse is telling. One day after another day causes speech to bubble forth, and one night after another night shows forth knowledge. There is no speech and there are no words, no voice on their part is being heard. Into all the earth their measuring line has gone out, and into the extremity of the productive land their utterances. Their utterances, their speech concerning Jehovah's glory and power and love and wisdom are going forth. And yet it states, there is no speech, there are no words. These things cannot speak. These inanimate and animate works of his, lower than human creatures. And yet they do speak, because in their making they reflect the Maker's justice and love and wisdom and power. The bee goes to the flower and gets nectar, gets its food. It's only just that it do some service. And it does. It pollinates the flower, makes the flower able to reproduce. There's an exchange of services. And this is seen in parts of the animal kingdom in many instances. We can see Jehovah's love in his works of creation. It states in Psalm 145, verse 16, "You are opening your hand and satisfying the desire of every living thing. Jehovah is righteous in all his ways and lovingly kind in all his works." In all the works of Jehovah God we can see his loving kindness, and we can see his provision for them by his opening of his hand and satisfying their desires. He's not required to do this. It's love that makes him do this, causes him to offer these provisions for the creatures in the earth. In the matter of wisdom, we read in Proverbs, the 30th chapter, starting with verse 24. "There are 4 things that are the smallest of the earth, but they are instinctively wise. The ants are a people not strong, and yet in the summer they prepare their food. The rock badgers are a people not mighty, and yet upon a crag is where they put their house. The locusts have no king, and yet they go forth all of them divided into groups. The gecko lizard takes hold with its own hands, and it is in the grand palace of a king." But notice it states, they are instinctively wise. They don't have the capacity for wisdom, for learning, for accumulating knowledge, but they are instinctively wise, meaning that Jehovah God put into their heads, into their brains at the time of creation, the necessary instincts for their preservation. And these insects and other animals act in a way that is extremely wise and marvelous and wonderful in the sight of men. Birds in their migration, bats in their flying through radar, and many other things. An investigation and a study shows that these creations of Jehovah reflect his attribute of wisdom. Even man is fearfully and wonderfully made, and a reflection of Jehovah's creative wisdom. In the matter of power, Jehovah's power is seen in such mighty animals as behemoth, or today the elephant, or the rhinoceros. Their power in running, in charging, in knocking over trees is amazing to man. He can see Jehovah's power in the thunder and the lightning, the wind, the rain, the stormy seas, the waves lashing the shore. The elements of earth are a display of Jehovah's power. Jehovah God created them. They're a reflection of his power. We can see around us in the works of creation a reflection of Jehovah's power. In chapters 38 through 41 in Job, it links wisdom and power in Jehovah's creation, calling attention to the solar systems, the planets, the stars, to certain animals and birds, as illustrations of Jehovah's wisdom and power. And then again we read in Jeremiah, the 51st chapter, and the 15th verse. He hath made the earth by his power. He hath established the world by his wisdom, and by his understanding hath he stretched out the heavens. By his wisdom and by his power, he's made the earth and the heavens. And his wisdom and his power can be seen reflected in these things. So it is very true what the Apostle Paul wrote in the 1st chapter of Romans and in the 20th verse. His invisible qualities are clearly seen from the world's creation onward, because they are understood by the things made, even his eternal power and godship, so that they are inexcusable. They should be able to see a reflection of Jehovah's attributes in his creation, and they're inexcusable if they brush him aside. And he made man in his image, with these attributes of justice, love, wisdom, and power. But then man got off balance. He became unbalanced. Really, the first one to get unbalanced was Eve. She was thrown off by Satan the devil and his temptations. He appealed to Eve's thirst for wisdom, to know, to decide what was good and what was bad. And she wanted more wisdom, to be like God in this respect. And so she ate this fruit to get more wisdom. But in trying to get more wisdom, she became unbalanced on the matter of love and justice. Jehovah had said, don't eat of this tree. Now there were plenty other trees for food. It was only just that she obey her Creator, who was providing for her in all these other ways. It was only loving that she obey him. But she lost some of her sense of justice and some of her quality of love to gain in the attribute of wisdom, and she threw herself off balance. And then she went to her husband, and she threw him off balance and caused him to eat. And in this unbalanced state they brought forth their offspring, and all of their offspring have been unbalanced ever since. Not having a proper balance between these four qualities or attributes, so that some men gain a lot of power and they misuse it to oppress, to launch wars, to aspire to dictatorships, to control the world. They get so strong on power, but they've lost out on love and justice. Some become so wise, but they don't show love, they get conceited. Or some have a great deal of love, but they don't apply themselves to gain wisdom. And as a result, they don't have very much power. So their love is not very effective. All of these things must be kept in a balance if they're going to be truly useful and effective. And so we have these qualities today, even if they are out of balance. And we can see this matter of justice. We like to see it done. We become righteously indignant if our justice is offended. The quality of love goes even farther than justice. And we must have love. We have to love ourselves before we can love others. Love covers a multitude of sins, the Bible states. If we love ourselves, it covers over some of our sins. We can see them, we can recognize them, we can admit them, we can seek forgiveness for them, and forget them. But people who do not love themselves try to overlook these things, do not confess them, do not admit them, try to justify themselves, and the result is they retain a lot of feelings of guilt and internal frustration and anxiety. And they cannot love others because we tend to pass these feelings on to someone else. A man gets bawled out by his boss, And instead of acknowledging his wrong, confessing it, asking forgiveness, and getting rid of that upset feeling, clearing the matter up, he doesn't do that. He comes home and scolds his wife, takes it out on her, and she's done nothing. She gets upset and slaps the kid. And the kid goes over and kicks the dog. And the dog wags its tail and wants to make up. It's the only one that's not frustrated and filled with guilt complexes. So we must be at inner peace and tranquility and serenity with ourselves. Approve ourselves. Be at peace with ourselves if we're going to love others. Because if we don't have this inner peace, we're going to pass on our bad moods to other people, which means we won't show love toward them. We have to show love toward others to show love to God. Because he said in his word, if you say you love me, but you're not loving your brother, you're a liar. Because how can you love me whom you haven't seen if you don't love your brother whom you can see? So in showing love for our brothers, we're showing love for Jehovah God. This love is very important. We want to receive love. And how do you do that? Well, it's as you sow, so shall you reap. Cast your bread on the waters, it comes back after many days. In the way that you measure out to others, Jesus said, they'll measure out a return to you. Do you want love from others? Then give it. Sow love to reap love. You can't sow your bad moods, your anxieties, your fears, your frustrations, push off your guilty feelings to someone else and blame them, shift responsibility, and get love. You're going to reap that same kind of feeling back again. And one recrimination will lead to another, and it sets up an evil cycle. The only way to end it is by love and showing love. Why do we love Jehovah God? In 1 John 4 it states, we love him because he loved us first. Why don't we make other people love us by loving them first? Why don't we be mature enough Christians to start the cycle of love instead of waiting for someone else to do it? And it doesn't do any good to have love for a person if you don't show it. You can express it in words. A better way is to show it by deed. But it must be shown and demonstrated. It can be shown by a gesture, a touch, a tone of voice. For example, a mother goes up to her baby in the crib and looks down at it and says, I love you, I see you, I see you. And the baby gurgles and kicks and coos and feels wonderful. But the baby doesn't know what she's saying. If the baby knew what she was saying, he'd probably think, well, you crazy old woman. If you can't see me, you're as blind as a bat. But the baby doesn't understand what she says. The baby understands her tone of voice. And the tone doesn't say, I see you. The tone of voice says, I love you, I love you. And the baby knows it and responds. So we have to show, and don't believe our feelings from the heart are not discernible, as well as say and do. We can say a thing hypocritically. We can do things with an ulterior motive. But it will be shown through the tone, the expression, the gesture, the expression. It cannot be long hidden. And that's why dogs know people who like them or who are afraid of them. And that's why children know the sincerity of adults as to whether they really love them or not. They sense these things. And other adults sense them too, though they are not so sharp at it as they once were in their days of childhood. You also show your love through little things. They say little things mean a lot. Well, why? Why little things? Why would it mean so much to bring your wife a little bouquet of violets? Why wouldn't it mean so much more to run in and rescue her out of a burning building? Well, because if you wait till you find your wife trapped in a burning building to express love, you may wait a lifetime. But you can bring her a bouquet of violets frequently. The little things mean a lot because the little things happen a lot. They're everyday things. And another reason why the little things mean a lot is because they're easily forgotten. Now, if you walk by your house and it's burning down, you're not going to say, oh, well, there's my house burning down. You walk on down the street. Immediately you're going to think, well, my wife or my child is in there. And you begin to rush around and do something. But it's so easy to forget a little thing. To remember a little thing, you have to have that person on your mind. You have to be thinking about that person. A person whom you really love is never too far away from your consciousness. And as you do things during the day, you think of that person in connection with these things. Well, I want to tell her this when I see her again. Or it reminds you of some little thing to do for that person. It shows that the person is on your mind. And the very fact that it is little is a greater testimony that you remembered than if it were something very big that you could not forget. So the little things mean a lot. And another thing we must remember too in loving a person, it's more than just a physical body. The Bible states in Proverbs, as a man thinks, so is he. A person is also his thoughts, his hopes, his memories, his loves, his work. All the things in connection with his life, his home, the things that he does daily, his religion, his beliefs, his faith, they're a part of a man. As he thinks, so is he. The expanded self takes in much more. That's why if you interfere with someone a person loves, you're attacking them, because their thoughts and memories are all tied up with that person. And they have an old saying, love me, love my dog. This dog is all wrapped up in the man's memories, and it's a part of his expanded self. That's why you can run down a person's home state. It can be nothing but a pile of sand. But that person was raised there, and his memories are there. He thinks of this state, and when he does, he thinks of his childhood, of his home, of his parents, of the things that he did when he was small. It represents years and years and years of his life. And when you attack that state of his, you attack these other things tied in with it. And the point I'm getting at is this. When you go witnessing, and you meet a Catholic or a Protestant, and maybe they've believed in purgatory for 30 years, and you attack that belief, you're attacking that man. You might as well hit him in the face if you hit his doctrine in a tactless way. You might see a man and say, well, I don't like his looks, I'm going to do something about it, and you go up and hit him in the jaw. Well, that's not the way to change the man's looks. If they have to be changed, get a plastic surgeon to do it painlessly. All right, now here's a man, his expanded self that takes in his religious beliefs. Maybe they need changing, maybe they're wrong. Maybe you don't like their looks, but you want to try to change it with this attribute of love showing, to help the man, not to attack him, not to assault him, not to offend his ego. And so it must be done out of love and kindness and consideration, in pointing out gently from the Bible what Jehovah's Word states. But also doing this. You want him to agree with you. So how do you get agreement? As you sow, so shall you reap. So sow agreement. Ask him about his religion. Let him talk about it. And wherever you can agree with him, agree. On the little things that do not make too much difference, on some things that may be the same as we see it, agree with him. Sow agreement. And you're not attacking him. And then when it comes to a big point, a major issue that the Scripture decides, then you must disagree and show from Jehovah's Word why you think it is different. But you've been agreeing with him on a number of things, small things. You've been sowing agreement, and now it isn't going to kill him to agree with you once. It isn't going to hurt his pride to go along with you on this point, if he's sincere and honest and he sees that it is the truth and it is supported by the Bible. So if you want agreement, sow agreement. Be tactful. And understand that when you attack a man's ideas or his faith, his cherished beliefs, you're attacking his expanded self. Because as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. So we want to show this love toward people in order to get them to love us. Then there is a matter of wisdom. We have this capacity, this thirst, this desire for wisdom, to know. A little child, they're full of questions. They're so curious. What's this? What's that? What causes this? What makes this happen? Who takes the sun away at night? Why does it get dark? Where are the stars during the daytime? They're full of questions, and they're not easy questions all the time either. And there's so many that they exhaust us and exasperate us, and sometimes make us angry. And I suspect usually when we get angry, it's because we don't know the answers ourselves. But they have a burning curiosity. They want to know. And as we get older, we lose this curiosity. It becomes dulled, we get a little mentally lazy. And there's so many things around us every day that are marvelous and wonderful, but how many times do we stop to wonder about them? Why? How does it happen? Here in the middle of the day, the sun is up in the sky, and the sky is all blue. And then just because the sun gets down near the horizon, the sky all turns red. Well, why does it turn red? Just because the sun's down there instead of up here. And the sun is a star. Now, all the other stars twinkle. Well, why doesn't our sun twinkle? Or you have white frost on green leaves, makes them red and yellow and brown and orange. Well, why? You have these Mexican jumping beans, and they jump when you hold them in your hand. Do you know why? Maybe you know it's because there's a worm in it. Well, other beans have worms in them, but they don't jump. Why does this one jump? Or you have a lot of these little cans now with different kinds of sprays in that you spray. You press a little plunger up here, and it sprays out. Do you know why it sprays out? And do you know why that pressure never runs out? That there's always enough there till the can itself is empty? Now, if they just pumped the can with pressure to start with, your pressure would gradually diminish. There wouldn't even be enough there to empty the can, but that isn't the way it is. You ever stop to think of why? There are so many things that are wonderful, and you see them in everyday life, but how much do we stop to question? Very little, because we get mentally lazy. We're no longer like children. And they say that's the difference between a genius and the average person. The genius never loses his childlike curiosity to question, to ask, to find out. And then there is the matter of power. Jehovah God said, have dominion over the earth, subdue it, have all the animals and everything else in subjection. This is a matter of power. Well, we don't have enough muscle to subject an elephant or a rhinoceros or some of the other animals. How can we do it? It's a combination of wisdom with power. And that's why the Proverbs state in the 24th chapter and in the 5th verse, a man of knowledge is reinforcing power. It is by our acquiring knowledge that our power develops. And man, because of his wisdom, has developed so much power that he can travel on land faster and farther than any other thing on the earth. He can travel in the air faster and farther and higher than any other thing. And under the water he can travel for weeks in his submarines. Through his wisdom, he has become powerful. And his power enables him to have dominion and subject everything. And this is an appetite, just like the appetite for food. And it's needed. Some people say, oh, why would a man want to climb a mountain? It's because of this attribute of power. He wants to subdue the earth, to have dominion over it, to show he can do it, because he's hungry to show his power. It's the same reason that a little girl wants to dry dishes before she's big enough. She wants to show that she can do it. It's hard for her. And so she wants to try it and do it and prove her power. And when she has proved it, she doesn't want to dry them anymore. Now she wants to make a cake and mess up the kitchen. She wants to do something more. Her power must be fed with something harder now. And a woman makes a simple house dress, and she's proud of it. But then she wants to make something more. She wants to make a suit or a coat. She wants to advance, because to do the same thing over doesn't feed your attribute of power anymore. And you take a puzzle, two little twisted nails that are put together, and someone says, can you take them apart? Can you? Are you able? Do you have the power? He's challenging your power. And you get these two nails and you work with them and you won't let go of them. You spend an hour or two with them. Or with a crossword puzzle. Or anything else that challenges you and says, you can't do it. And you say, I can. Because it's your attribute of power. And you want to keep trying harder things, climb higher mountains, or whatever your interest is. That's the line in which you will show your power and develop it. And it's a good thing Jehovah made us this way, because if he didn't, there would be no progress. This attribute of power is the secret of progress. Because after we're able to do one thing, it doesn't satisfy our longing for power anymore. We want to do something harder. We want to progress and advance and do more, do harder, fly faster and higher, and get to the moon and then Mars and on into outer space because of power. And it's a wonderful quality. But we should be balanced. If your power and your wisdom are guided and directed by love and justice, it won't be misused. If it isn't, it will be misused. So we need to be balanced. We need to help others get balanced. And to help other people, you have to understand other people. For example, there's a lot of talk now about delinquency in teenagers. I'd like to spend just a few minutes on that. People need to understand teenagers. They're going from dependent childhood to independent adulthood. They're at a transition period. They're wanting to put aside their dependence and become independent. They're wanting to grow up, and so they want to do more, and they want to prove their independence. And that makes them rebellious against parents, because on whom have they been dependent? Parents. So now, from whom must they become independent? Parents. And so they start to break away. And sometimes they are resisted by the parents too much, and that makes them fight and rebel all the more. It's like releasing a spring if you have it compressed in your hand. If you let it go quickly, it'll fly in some uncontrolled direction, and that's not good. If you hold it all the time, it will gradually weaken, and it won't be any good. But if you gradually let it come out, it will stand where you want it to stand. And that's what the parent must do. Must not let the child go all at once, giving unlimited independence, for he doesn't have enough wisdom to direct himself. But if the parent tries to hold the child under completely, it'll either break his spirit like a weakened spring, or the child will break away in rebellion and run away from home. There must be a gradual release, allowing the child to do more and more and take on more responsibility, and as they do things well, encourage them, to give them confidence and direction. Sometimes they rebel just for the sake of rebelling, just to prove their independence. Like Jesus said in this case of the man who had 2 boys, and he goes to one of them and he says, "I want you to go work in my vineyard today." And he says, "All right, I'll go." And the father went away and the child didn't go. He was one of these submissive sons. Had no real spirit. He didn't want to work in the vineyard. He wasn't going to work in the vineyard, and he knew he wasn't. But he didn't like to have a fight or a conflict. So he says, "All right, I'll go." He lied to his father. And he sneaked off and did what he wanted to do anyway. Just like children do when parents are too harsh on them. And he went to his other son and said, "Go work in my vineyard today." And the boy says, "No, I won't go." The father didn't make an issue over it. He didn't challenge his independence. He let the matter rest there for a while. And the boy got to feeling regret. And he went and worked in the vineyard. He wasn't proving anything by not working. He wasn't proving his independence. The father hadn't even made an issue of the matter. And so sometimes we get along better when we don't make an issue. Sometimes a young person wants to go with another young person. You may not like for them to run with that person, and you oppose it. That's just the person they want to run with. Not so much because they care about that person, but they're going to show you. They're going to prove their independence. Sometimes you can oppose too much, and of course sometimes you can oppose too little. There must be a right balance in the matter. Parents should be able to understand this desire for independence. We were created as free moral agents. We want freedom of action, to the extent that we can get it. Have you ever heard anyone say, "Well, I drove from here to New York City in an hour and 15 minutes, and I didn't get a ticket." And they feel real proud about it. Do you know why? They might not have been in a hurry, but they were proving their independence. They were defying authority. The law says, don't go that fast. And they went that fast and faster, and they got away with it, and they proved their independence, and they weren't held down by this authority that was trying to do it. And they feel smug about it. And that's why you have the saying that stolen sweets taste better. You're not supposed to steal sweets. Someone can give you some, or you can buy some, and they taste good. But if they're stolen, they taste better because you've also defied authority to get them. You've proved your independence. And the Bible shows the same thing as that saying when it states in the 9th chapter in the 17th verse, "Stolen waters themselves are sweet, and bread eaten in secrecy, it is pleasant," because you're defying authority and you're proving your independence. It's not always good. The next verse says, "But he has not come to know that those impotent in death are there, that those called in by her are in the low places of Sheol." We shouldn't defy proper authority, but conform to it. But at least understand these qualities in other people, not just teenagers, but in all people. And make a balance, make allowances, and you'll get along better, and you'll get more cooperation. You'll get more out of them in that way. It doesn't do to get preachy, to harangue. After you've made your point, quit sticking them with it or they'll get sore. Some people preach and preach and preach and preach and say, "When I was a boy, so and so and so and so and so." And they never tell the bad things about when they were boys. It's always some good thing, and if their parents were there, they could probably contradict them on that. But they want to preach and appear self-righteous, and that's offensive to anyone. And it's a mistake for parents to do it. We ought to know how to deal with people. Here's the case of the prodigal son. He went to his father, and he says, "I want my share of the inheritance. I want to go out on my own." He wanted to be independent. And the father let him go. And he didn't send him away with a long sermon, a lot of pessimistic prophesying as to what bad ends he'd come to out there in the world on his own. He wisely figured that if I haven't instilled good principles in this boy in all the years he's been with me, I'm not going to do it in a last-minute harangue. And so he let him go. And when the boy found out what he had left and what he had gotten into and saw the mess that he had made, he went back. If the father had sent him away with a lot of pessimistic prophesying and haranguing and sermonizing, the boy would probably have never come back. Because he figured, now when I get back, what am I going to hear? "I told you so. I told you before you left. I knew it would work out this way." And he'd beat him down into the ground and humiliate him and make him feel worse than he did out there with the swine that he was tending. And he wouldn't have come back. But he had a different kind of father. He had a father that really loved him. And he came back. And from a distance the father saw him, and he ran out and threw his arms around him, hugged him, and wept on his neck. And the boy says, "Look, I'm not worth being your son anymore. Let me be one of your slaves." "No, no, no, kill the fatted calf. We'll have a feast. You're my son." And he didn't say a word of reproof or rebuke. He didn't need to. The boy had learned his lesson, or he wouldn't have come back. After a person has learned his lesson, don't beat them to death with "I told you so's." It isn't the way of love to do that. And so, we want to try to get balance in these things and understand people and how to work with people. We want to get our own balance back, and we want to help others regain theirs. We can do that by coming to the hall, by studying Jehovah's Word, by commenting, and we can help others by bringing them into association with us. Hebrews 4:12 states that God's Word is alive and exerts power. Power to do what? To do what is stated in Romans, the 12th chapter and the 2nd verse. "Quit being fashioned after this system of things, but be transformed by making your mind over, that you may prove to yourselves the good and acceptable and complete will of God." So we need to make our minds over, to get back in balance in these attributes of justice, love, wisdom, and power. And the Bible is full of discussion of these attributes and how they should be blended and harmonized, and one control and guide and keep in balance the others, so that one is not used too much or too little. It states in Ephesians, the 4th chapter, You should put away the old personality that conforms to your former course of conduct, which is being corrupted according to his deceptive desires. You should be made new in the force actuating your mind. How are you made new? The force actuating your mind, what you're feeding into your mind, your study of Jehovah's Word and absorbing its principles of justice, love, wisdom, and power. And should put on the new personality, which was created according to God's will. There's another scripture about this personality we're to put on. It's in Colossians, the 3rd chapter, the 9th and 10th verses. Strip off the old personality with its practices, and clothe yourselves with the new personality, which through accurate knowledge is being renewed. Through accurate knowledge it's being renewed. How? According to the image of the one who created it. According to the image of Jehovah God and Christ Jesus, in whose images and likenesses we were first made. That's the new personality that we must put on. The personality that is in the image of the one who made it. And his image is a perfect balance of justice, of love, of wisdom, and of power. And we can do this by the force actuating our mind, through accurate knowledge, by making our minds over, by letting Jehovah's Word form and shape our minds like a potter does a clay vessel. And then, when we regain our balance, we help others, and we work on their minds, as shown in 2 Corinthians, the 10th chapter. The weapons of our warfare are not fleshly, but are powerful by God for overturning strongly entrenched things. For we are overturning reasonings, and every lofty thing raised up against the knowledge of God. And we are bringing every thought into captivity to make it obedient to the Christ. We're trying to reach human minds and make them over, to take out their false thoughts and put in the place God's thoughts, to bring their thinking into captivity to the thinking and thoughts of Christ Jesus and Jehovah God. And to do that requires power, because it's hard to change another person's mind. And our power is reinforced by knowledge. So we have to get the knowledge ourselves. We have to gain knowledge, we have to gain wisdom to have the power to do it. And we have to direct our wisdom and our power for this according to justice, yes, but more important, according to love. Love and an understanding heart, appreciating people and how to deal with people, how to help them. Paul said, I could have all the gifts. I could speak in tongues. I could move mountains. I could even offer my body to be burned. But if I don't have love, it means nothing. And if we go out in the field to preach with wisdom and power, and we say, Armageddon's coming, if you don't do so and so, God's going to kill you. And we can declare the truth, and we can prove them wrong, and we can refute their beliefs. And we may feel very, very wise and come away saying, I sure got the best of him. You didn't get the best of him. The best of him would be getting his mind to open up and listen and take in what you're saying. But it takes love to do that. You have to get love in your heart for these people, so that when you go to preach to them, you won't sound preachy. You won't sound like you're trying to reform someone. People don't like reformers, because reformers are usually self-righteous, and their preaching sounds like a criticism of everyone else. And it seems like a reverse way of saying, look how self-righteous I am, and no one likes it. Have love in your heart, and feel what you're saying, and sincerely try to help. Be genuine in your approach. Have the wisdom, yes, and the justice, and the power, but be sure you have the love too, because without love, it's all nothing, and it won't accomplish much. So we need to have all of these attributes in balance. If we are to be real Christians and be effective preachers and help others to become balanced, to help ourselves and others return in balance in the image and likeness of Jehovah God. And then in the new world of righteousness, when everyone feels this way, with these same thoughts, same desires, same sense of justice and of love and of wisdom and of power, it will be a wonderful place in which to live. And it will be the accomplishment of Jehovah's purpose. It won't be some dull cattle yard like some scientists have said, saying who would want to live in a utopia where there's no struggle, no hardship, no conflict, nothing to fight against. Well, they're partially right. We wouldn't like it, we wouldn't be happy in it, because we're in God's image. We still have this attribute of power. We don't want to use that power in fighting, or in wars, or in oppression, or in destructive work. But we still have it, it's still a hunger, we'll still have to use it in some way. So we can use it in progressive ways of learning more about ourselves, about the plants of the earth, about the animals, about the moon and the sun and the stars and all of the other planets, the galaxies in the whole universe. There will always be something to challenge our minds, for our power to reach out to learn, to know, to find out how to do. It won't be dull. There will still be a use for power. The new world will not be a cattle yard. It won't be like placid cows standing out in the pasture, munching grass or stretched out chewing their cud. People will be alive and alert, full of energy, action, working, and enjoying their work, conquering, subduing the earth, having dominion over everything on the earth. Their sense of power will mean progress, unending, and never to anyone's hurt, because it'll always be directed wisely and justly and lovingly. So then we want to study and work to try to take on more and more of Jehovah's balance of these attributes and help others do the same, so that we can all live together forever in Jehovah's new world of righteousness.